Alright gamers, I've been traveling for the last month, so not a whole lot of video content has been worked on, and so the next big video, which will probably be the iceberg one, is a couple of weeks away, so I wanted to make a for fun video in the meantime to ease back into it. I knew I wanted to make a video about the herbivore monsters in Monster Hunter, and this was originally a trip through time as we went through each of them and how they've changed over the course of the series, but honestly, they haven't innovated a whole lot, and without some notable large monsters in this group, it was frankly a little bit boring. So instead, what we're going to do is rank all of the mainline herbivores in order on the basis of how much I like them, with absolutely no objectivity at all, and sprinkle in some of those other details I was going to talk about throughout, and keep it all a bit more of an engaging video to both make and watch. Alright, let's roll. The classifications in Monster Hunter are all pretty coherent until you get to two specific groups. Two groups whose definitions seemingly have very little to do with biology or anything like that, but rather are just straight up vibes based. The first that likely already jumped out to you were the Elder Dragons, a group that specifically exists for that exact reason, but the second one is the most vibes based of all, and it's the herbivores, as I said before. Take some monsters from all different evolutionary trees and lump them together not based on their physical traits, but rather on their diet. Today we're going to try and make the mundane a little bit more interesting, ranking the mainline herbivores all the way from number 17 to number 1, and we might even try our hand at placing them in some of the other existing classifications, just for a bit of fun. Why not? To kick things off, we do have a couple of honorable mentions before we get into the rankings proper. The Bullfango is disqualified on account of it no longer being a herbivore, though it was one back in the first generation. That said, if I were to rank it today, it wouldn't be considered very highly because, much like most folks, I find Bullfango annoying and its design pretty uninspired. The other two honorable mentions are Urup and Baraku, or however you pronounce that, the two herbivores exclusive to Frontier. They've been omitted from this video because I don't really know anything about them, and given that the herbivores are inherently minor monsters, it seemed a little odd to bother and try to source footage for them just to be like, yeah, this is a goat and this is a bison. Alright, now that we're actually into it, we are of course going in reverse order, and so kicking it off at number 17, we have what I consider to be the worst one, purely based on it being so forgettable, and I cannot think of a single nostalgic memory or endearing quality about it. It's the Gastrodon. Found only in the Elder's Recess and the Guiding Lands by extension, the Gastrodon is something of a mishmash between a bison and a nondescript dinosaur, yelling and charging at you at a couple of zones across the recess. They are super low impact and feel like a pretty last minute and lazy addition to the map to give it its own herbivore by just copying and pasting Gastrodon, but worse. Gastrodon is just a bit of a nothing burger, and I also just don't like when they put hair on reptiles, which these are, they're dinosaurs, and so they get the last place slot. But the last place slot means it's the first reclassification. Given that the herbivores are one of the few classes that are just a collection of monsters that at times don't have any evolutionary connection, I thought it'd be fun to hypothetically reclassify them to fit into some of the other groups as we go. Maybe we'll even make up a new one or two along the way. And so given that Gastrodon is placed alongside Duramboros and Bunboro when it appears in the evolutionary trees we get in the lore books, I think it tracks to consider it a brute wyvern. For the number 16 slot, we are switching gears a little bit. This whole list won't be just me dumping on new designs while glorifying old ones, I promise. And so 16 goes to Mosswine. I get what they're going for with Mosswine. It's a truffle pig, but like an actual truffle pig, like a pig covered in mushrooms and plants who spends most of its time keeping to itself to find more mushrooms and plants, but that's really all it is. It lacks anything monstrous about its design to push it into the realm of the fantastical, I think. It's just a bit boring. But there's probably an argument to be made that this low-key design is what helps the series to be grounded, and you're absolutely right. I still don't care about Mosswine though. It has, however, somehow managed to be a regular since the very beginning, even being brought forward into World, though some players may go their entire playthrough without ever seeing one. On the topic of reclassifying them, this one's pretty easy because of Bullfango. The monster that it is most closely related to has already been reclassified officially in the past, making Mosswine a fanged beast as well by extension. Then the number 15 slot, this one came as a surprise to me because when I set out to make this list, I honestly expected it to be very top heavy with dinosaur designs because, well, I'm quite partial to a good dino design, but alas, Gastrodon gets 15. Gastrodon, much like Gastrodon, is a little bit whatever. It's supposed to be the Gen 5 aggressive herbivore, but it doesn't do it as well as some of the later entries in this list, and its design is just a little uninspired, a little bit bland, I think. It's clearly supposed to be like a pachycephalosaur or something, and maybe I just don't like those guys as much as I thought I did. the more you know. I will say that I like the sexual dimorphism between the male and the female ones. Again, it helps to make the world feel a little bit more real. Kestodon also obviously gets the brute wyvern classification from me. It's closely related to Gastodon after all, and we already did that one. Number 14 then goes to Apsaris, because I've never liked it that much despite how long it's been around. It's just kind of ugly, and its design reads like a child's drawing of an Ankylosaur, and it just, I don't know, it doesn't do much for me. You can find these guys in deserts and volcanoes spanning most of the mainline Monster Hunter games, and they have this weird little behavior that makes them slowly track you, walking at a slow pace, but like laser honed in on the hunter while you're still in the area, so you kind of just forget about them and go about your business, and then next thing you know, you're being knocked around while you're trying to do something else. They're just annoying. They did get some cool new behavior in World where they gather together in that circle to defend themselves, but it's just not my vibe. They are, however, the first monster on this list that I don't feel fit well into a pre-existing class. This is because there are only a few large monsters in the series that are big, angry herbivores, and none of them really match Apsaris' design and body plan. Furthermore, in the evolutionary trees we get every so often, Apsaris, along with some of the other monsters we'll go over shortly, are classified as ornithischians, which is the same group that real-life dinosaurs that serve as their inspirations fall into. In fact, all the dinosaurs that aren't theropods and sauropods fall into this group in the real world. All that said though, let's not get too bogged down, let's have some fun with it and make up a group that feels like it fits the naming conventions of Monster Hunter. I've personally decided to go with grazing wyverns, and we'll populate this group beyond Apsaris soon enough. As we get to number 13, we're now getting to monsters that I don't actively dislike, but don't really make me feel strongly one way or another. The classic midpoint of any ranking or tier list. Dalthodon goes here because I think it's a better execution of the idea behind Kestodon, and it has a nice little spot in the world due to its ties to Kunafa. Dalthodon is sort of this bipedal buffalo cow monster that can be found in the Scarlet Forest and the Windward Plains, and sort of act as Monster Hunter Wild's pack animal, used by multiple groups when needed. In Kunafa specifically, they are kept as livestock, and it is their milk that is used to make the cheese we find all around that village. Their design is something I'm largely indifferent to, but the baby ones are pretty cute. The only downside to them, in my opinion, is I think they're a little out of place in the Scarlet Forest. They don't quite fit in there. As for reclassifying them, well, they superficially resemble Gastodon and even Bunbora to an extent, but those are reptiles based on their evolutionary tree, and Dalthodon produce milk, so they have to be mammals. Given that fact, and given that just about every single other mammal monster in the series goes into the same group, Dalthodon have got to go in the Fang Beast as well, just with a brute wyvern body plan. Number 12 then goes to the Mufa, which you may not have even realized are a monster outside of their appearance in Burner Village, because they are so rare that you can probably miss them entirely. They are only found in a couple of areas in the deserted island in Monster Hunter Generations and Generations Ultimate, sometimes. This is a map that already had Kelbies, and so their addition here, as opposed to like the Ruined Pinnacle or something, seems totally pointless. Mufa's design is largely uninspired as well, and apart from the antlers, are pretty much just alpacas. They make it this high up on the list despite all of this though for two reasons. One, because I like Burner Village, and they are a pretty core component of it, and two, because of Mufi, of course. Mufi filled in for Poogie in Burner, and was a baby Mufa that lived in the player's room, and could be pet and dressed up and all that jazz, and this might be a hot take, but I actually reckon that Mufi is cuter than Poogie. Yeah, there, I said it. Clearly being a mammal as well, Mufa are of course a fanged beast. Then we have the Slagtoth at number 11. These guys are neat in that they feature inspirations from some like ceratopsian and hadrosaur dinosaurs, but are very much their own thing, which makes them feel like monsters and as such a coherent part of the Monster Hunter world. They've got this loose, saggy skin across their body, giving them an almost bulldog look to their face, and they've come in several different color variations throughout the series' lifetime. Mostly found in very wet environments, their hide is supposed to be very resistant, and so they're quite hardy creatures. Slagtoth are neat, and we're starting to get into monsters that I'm actually quite fond of. Slagtoth, though they look a bit weird, are closely related to the likes of Apsaris, and so are the second monster to get our new classification of grazing wyvern. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let the top 10 begin, and number 10 goes to the Gown Goat. Much like Mufa, Gown Goat are super rare because they only showed up in Sunbreak and only appeared in like two areas of the Citadel, so you don't get much exposure to them, and you'd be forgiven if you'd forgotten them. That said though, I do really like the design. This goat-like creature with a massive flowing fur coming from its back and tail in the form of a gown, hence the name, and coupled with the droopy ears, it's pleasant to look at. It's also very thematic, much like everything else in the Citadel is, and presents gown goats as a sort of damsel in distress type to go along with the gothic European aesthetic of the expansion as a whole. You know, you got the ruined castle and the classic movie monster inspirations of Garangol, Ludogaren, and Malzeno, and you got boggies being goblins, and it's all very nice, and gown goat fits very well. As for classifying it, mammal equals fanged beast, so fanged beast it shall be. Number 9 is going to be a little hypocritical, but I don't care because it's my list, and that's because it goes to Kelby. And well, Kelby is little more than a deer, and Mosswine and Mufa got wrecked because they were just normal animals, but bear with me. Yes, Kelby is a deer, but have you considered that it is in fact a blue deer? Something about Kelby just hits me harder in the nostalgia than Mosswine does, and it being blue does help it stand out. The addition of the large horn variants in Gen 3 was also pretty cool, and as someone who's a sucker for Gen 3, it definitely adds points. To top it all off, back in the older games, Kelby's texture work actually makes it look like it has scales, like a pangolin or something like that, which I thought was super cool. Now, this didn't end up being the case, and once we got higher definition models for Kelby, it was shown that it just has fur, but I still remember that to this day. I like Kelby, and Kelby is a fanged beast. As weird as that feels to say. The number 8 slot goes to the cooler Kelby, aka the Anteca. Again, they're just very nostalgic. Monster Hunter Freedom Unite was a huge game for me, and they are always hopping around the Snowy Mountains map, which is the first map in that game. They just take me back, man. They're sort of this mix between a mountain goat and a reindeer, but they always just look really pissed off. That coupled with the cool horn design, I just like them, man. They've never had a spotlight except for like the Ghost Harag intro cutscene, I think, but sometimes you just like something, and that's all there is to it. Again, fanged beast, moving on. Keeping with the Snowy Mountain theme, we then have the Popo coming in at number 7. Popo are just very lovable and dopey. Basically just mammoths, but without a trunk. They wander around most snowy maps waiting to be eaten by something with big sharp teeth, and are pretty common in the snow-themed villages we come across throughout the series. They're widely known now thanks to their appearance in World and Rise, and I was today years old when I realized that they have big floppy ears on the sides of their head. I thought it was just a bunch of fur and their ears are like hidden in there somewhere, but nope. Those are their ears. Great stuff. Popo are indeed mammals, which makes them de facto fanged beasts, but more importantly, they are closely related to the Gammoth. Gammoth is a monster that I love personally, and I always thought that it'd be cool if it was classified as a herbivore, purely from a flavor point of view, so that the group could get a cool large monster, but alas, that was never the case. Alright, on to number 6. My affinity for the third generation shines through once more, as slot number 6 goes to Retaplos. Now, it being this high up is odd because it is fundamentally a stand-in for the Bullfango, in that it does not like you, and it will charge you the first chance it gets, but for one, it is a dinosaur, and thus is way cooler, and 2, it does that thing where it yells at you when it's on its way, so it's got more warning. Retaplos is just cool, man. It's clearly dino-inspired, but also just kind of looks like a little monster. I like it a lot. It also hits the nostalgia nerve because back in Tri, there was no better armor set to take on Baroth than the Retaplos armor. Baroth was kind of a wall, and it was the first time we saw the mud mechanic, and the Retaplos armor negated mud. It was good shit. It also made you look like a complete dickhead if you're a male, and a little teddy bear if you're a female. As for its reclassification, Retaplos falls under our new grazing wyvern class, having several features derived from ceratopsian dinosaurs, and being closely related to the Slagtoth. Number 5. While Stealthodon got the short end of the stick, I actually really like the other wilds herbivores quite a lot, and so the number 5 slot goes to Rathma. It's quite a unique little monster for a few reasons. The first is that the herbivores rarely get an element or an ailment. In fact, I don't think a single monster we've gone over today has one, and so the fact that Rathma has electrified horns that can paralyze not only you, but other monsters as well, is very cool. These horns also give them a practical use in-game, as you can yoink them with the slinger and get paralysis pods as well. They also just have a cool design and silhouette to them, which is simple but effective in communicating their place and their attitude. They're obviously designed to be mountain goat equivalent, but they're just monstrous enough that they scratch that itch for me. Once we eventually get an evolutionary tree for wilds, I imagine Rathma will be placed alongside Mufa and Gown Goat, and as such they get the Fang Beast treatment as well in our little reclassification side quest here. Number 4. Continuing on with the goated entries in Monster Hunter Wilds, we have the Karatanoth. Maybe it's just the recency bias talking, but Karatanoth is one of the best new small monsters we've had in a while. Seeing a huge herd of them strolling across the plains or stampeding through the caverns, it's just awe-inspiring, to be honest. Their design is spot on as well, bringing to mind both dinosaur inspirations, but also obviously pangolin vibes as well, and the male ones have those huge lightning rods on their backs to protect the herd. There's never been a herbivore that feels so custom-tailored to their environments, and their presence in the plains makes the other locales in Wilds feel weaker by comparison. They are grounded but fantastical, absolutely spot-on design, an all-timer for sure. When reclassifying them, whilst they have the pangolin-inspired design, it seems like they are still definitely reptiles, and I imagine they'll be placed alongside Slagtoth and Apsaurus when we get the Wilds evolutionary tree, and so they get the grazing wyvern classification in my book. Number 3. If you could allow me one final indulgence in Generation 3 glazing before we wrap up, Epioth gets the number 3 slot. Now this is probably again just down to my affinity for 3 Ultimate, but more importantly my affinity for underwater combat. Epioth was the obligatory herbivore added to the underwater sections of the Deserted Island and the Flooded Forest maps, and as such has not been seen since the end of Gen 3. They are entirely harmless, I'm not even sure if you can prompt them to attack you. Their design is clearly supposed to be a big docile plesiosaur of some sort, with koi fish details on their face and fins, and their behavior is something akin to like a manatee, bobbing around, eating seagrass, and otherwise being unbothered unless something is trying to eat them. Epioth is one of the most unique herbivores, which bumps it up, and the only one to be exclusively aquatic. It should be pretty obvious, but they would be leviathans if anything, making them the only one on today's list. Number 2. Moving on to today's penultimate pick, you probably thought this guy was going to be the first place slot, but alas, he just misses out. That said, there is no herbivore more iconic than the Aptonoth, and it's just as much a Monster Hunter icon as Feline and Rathalos are. The herbivore, Aptonoth was in every single Monster Hunter property ever up until it was rudely omitted in Monster Hunter Rise in favor of, I don't know, Bombadji. Luckily, Aptonoth can be found in wilds, just not in the wild, as they are only seen as beasts of burden in the base camps, but they are there so it counts. My fondness for Aptonoth comes largely from nostalgia. It's just been around forever, featured in so many of the opening cutscenes and ecology videos. It's so iconic, as I said, but also because it's just such a dinosaur-looking ass monster design. It's like the ultimate herbivorous dinosaur amalgamation, with the head crest and back hump you might find on a hadrosaur like a Parasaurolophus, but the obligate quadrupedal stance and the big old spikes you see on the end of its tail, just like a stegosaur. It's just great, and for whatever reason, appeals to me so much more than Apsaurus does, despite them sharing a lot of the design tropes and longevity. Aptonoth is the herbivore, and it would be the grazing wyvern if we ever got such a monster class. Number 1. Alright folks, for those keeping count, there is only one herbivore left, and there's no point in hiding it any longer. My absolute favourite monster in this class is none other than the Laranoth. The day they finally made a sauropod-inspired dinosaur was the day I decided I could die happy. Laranoth is, I believe, the largest quote-unquote small monster in the game, and if it weren't for its placement as the herbivore in the introductory map of the Generations games, and thus needing to be easily slain, I think it could have been given so much more tech to make it a brand new type of large monster. Like, Laranoth is big enough that it could absolutely fold a hunter like laundry if it needed to, but alas, we don't live in that universe, and that's not the case. Laranoth is just a great, unique monster that I adore. It's a sort of sauropod with organs on its head and neck that allow it to produce these trumpet-like calls, and it is just so perfectly placed in the Jurassic Frontier, which is also one of my favorite Monster Hunter maps ever, adding to the appeal, I suppose. Now, just one final touch. How do we reclassify it? Well, the obvious pick on the surface would be the grazing wyverns because it's a herbivorous dinosaur-like design, 4 legs and all that jazz, but when you have a look at its placement in the evolutionary trees, you won't find it anywhere near Aptonoth or Apsaurus. In fact, Laranoth belongs to the same group as all of the flying, bird, brute, and fanged wyverns. The reason being that in our current understanding of the science in the real world, sauropods are saurischιans like theropods, not ornithischians like most other herbivorous dinosaurs. And so we have ourselves a little conundrum. Do we arbitrarily lump it in with a group that it doesn't really belong in, or do we create another snake wyvern situation where there's a unique group with almost nothing in it? I could go either way, to be honest, and I don't think there's an ideal solution. If it is a grazing wyvern, then the group isn't biologically consistent. If it's another fake classification, like say, I don't know, long-necked wyverns, then we need some more sauropods, or we can just get really wild with it and call it a fanged wyvern, because out of all Saurischιan monsters, that's the closest we get because they all stand on 4 legs. Yeah, I don't know for this one. Let me know what you think. Then there you have it, folks. A definitive ranking of all of the herbivores in Monster Hunter history. Very objectively ranked. There will be no additions or amendments. Sorry. Let me know which one is your favorite in the comments down below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video with your friend if you think they'll like it too. And yeah, I'm going to go back to making that iceberg video now. All right. Thanks, guys. Love you. Bye.